Hello, Internet. Mike Byrne here from MMOBomb.com, bringing you another episode of MMO Thoughts, and this time I am I don't even know what's going on anymore. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the whole Epic Games versus Apple thing. We've done that on this show before, but I want to give you two little updates, and then we'll get to the crux of the episode, which is Tim Sweeney being, wow. So first off, a few bigger updates have happened in the whole Epic versus Apple lawsuit. We've covered them on MMOBomb.com, so if you've been reading those articles, you're all up to date. But first up, a judge did throw out Apple's claim that Epic was basically engaging in theft when they bypassed the store. So those allegations had no merit, and the judge threw those out. Now today, we've got another little kind of a bigger update here, where Apple did announce that they are going to cut their 30% cut of all the revenue that is the standard on the iOS App Store to 15%. So cut it in half. But that's with the caveat that, one, it will take place January 1st, 2021, and go forward from there. And two, it will only impact developers. So it's kind of a goodwill move, I guess you could say, because of the lawsuit and the negative public attention and the more scrutinizing attention of U.S. governments and governments elsewhere in Europe and throughout the world. Maybe this is like a little olive branch. Hey, if you have a developed app that is making less than $1 million in net annual sales, we're only going to charge you 15% to be on the App Store, not 30% to be on the App Store. But, that doesn't really do much as far as something as big as Fortnite goes on the App Store. And in fact, it's projected by CNBC that 93% of the actual income brought in on the App Store comes from the top 1% of app publishers. So this isn't a huge monetary change for Apple, but maybe it garners a little goodwill. Now, if you thought that maybe that would get Epic to back off of this fight a little bit, Tim Sweeney did take to Twitter to make that a little clearer in response to some people asking, hey, now that the little guy that you were fighting for is getting this half-off discount, can we expect things to kind of settle down here? Tim Sweeney saying, no, that's not what we were making the argument against. We weren't just trying to save the little guy money. We were trying to make sure that this walled garden that Apple has is no longer a walled garden, and the developers still have no choice but to use the App Store and agree to the 15% because they don't have any other option. Even though it's 15 instead of 30, they don't have any other option if they want to be on the iOS platform. So Tim Sweeney kind of course correcting to say, hey, yes, while this is beneficial to the little guy, this doesn't change our ongoing litigation and what we're actually fighting for in this circumstance, or what they view to be fighting for. Now, up until now, it's been relatively easy to say, look, you maybe aren't a fan of exactly the way Epic went about things here, signing a contract, then breaking that contract to kick off all of this litigation, and basically being ready for that with the whole trailer and all that fun stuff. You might not be a fan of that, but you can see where they're coming from, and you know what? Although you don't really care if Epic per se wins here, you think it would be nice if there was a competitive marketplace on iOS. So maybe the end result will be a net good, even if you questioned Epic's individual motives for doing this type of lawsuit. So yeah, fine. I can see where you're coming from. And for a while, I held that opinion too. Hey, you know what? I don't think Tim Sweeney and Epic are being entirely upfront about what they're after here, because there is quite a bit of money at stake on their side as well to have Fortnite on the App Store. to put that into a actual dollar amount for you, it's made an estimated $1.2 billion from the App Store, according to Business Insider. So, yeah, they're a little over this 30 to 15 threshold. They're not going to qualify for this, but they would be getting X more dollars on top of that if this wasn't a 30% cut. So maybe that's their motivation. You know what? Fine. Publicly, they're saying it's this fight for tearing down of walled gardens, which we don't see this fight going on, at least yet, from Epic when it comes to other platforms, namely the consoles, who have their own individual walled gardens within their console platforms, whether it be Sony's PlayStation or Microsoft's Xbox or Nintendo's Switch. We don't see those fights yet. Maybe, as the judge has mentioned before, this particular lawsuit will have repercussions for those down the road, and that's kind of why Epic isn't fighting that fight yet. Established precedent here. But at the end of the day, maybe it's going to be a net good, because competition, in theory, does give developers and publishers options. Who's going to offer me the best service at the best rates to sign on with them instead of signing on with Apple? So that was, easy to say, hey, okay, fine. Like, you might not being honest, Tim, up front, that it's a money battle too, but I think it'll be a net good. That is until today. So reporting from Connie Loizos over at TechCrunch, who was reporting on the DealBook conference, or the DealBook summit that had been going on here. And if you don't know what DealBook is, it's a platform offered by the New York Times here in the United States that focuses more on the financial sector and day-to-day financial dealings and interviews with power brokers and CEOs of companies and things like that. And they do an annual summit where, Bill Gates has spoken at it before, and Tim Sweeney was talking to DealBook during their 2-day event recently, and compared the Epic and Apple fight to the civil rights movement here in the United States in an incredibly just not only tone-deaf way, but massively inappropriate way. So let me read you the quote here, and then we'll get to it a little bit, just to, yeah. Anyway, said Sweeney, it's everybody's duty to fight. It's not just an option that somebody's lawyers might decide, but it's actually our duty to fight that. If we had adhered to Apple's terms and, taken their 30% payment processing fees and passed the cost along to our customers, that would be Epic colluding with Apple to restrain competition on iOS and to inflate prices for consumers. So, going along with Apple's agreement is what is wrong, and that's why Epic mounted a challenge to this. And you can hear any and a little bit of an inaudible here, to civil rights, where there were actual laws on the books, and the laws were wrong, and people disobeyed them. And it was not wrong to disobey them, because to go along with them would be collusion to make them status quo. Okay, so it might be easy at first glance to say, okay, really bad analogy, but I think what Tim was trying to say here was, hey, it's okay to fight laws or rules that aren't fair laws or rules, and made a really bad analogy or equivalency to the civil rights movement. Fighting laws or rules that are inherently wrong doesn't make the fight wrong. However, if there would have been a statement afterwards saying, I made a really bad analogy, but this was the point that I was trying to make, that we don't feel like we're doing something wrong here. Maybe you could you could put it all down as a horribly bad, spur-of-the-moment, tone-deaf statement. But Sweeney went further. Sweeney, an estimated $9 billion individual net worth CEO, went further on Twitter when this story actually was tweeted out by TechCrunch and posted, hey, it's a good article. Hey, critics, please read what I said and tell me if it's actually wrong. When the rules were wrongful, it was right to disobey them. That's the comparison to the civil rights movement. This was an answer to the question of why Epic broke Apple's developer guidelines the way we did. So he doubled down. He doubled down on, that's the example. Yeah, there were unfair rules, unfair laws. We chose to disobey them. Same thing as the civil rights movement. You know, that whole thing in the United States where people of color were often violently oppressed without having actually gone into a contract willingly to be violently oppressed, by the way. A huge difference between these two scenarios, right? Epic signed a contract with Google under rates that, hey, you might not have liked to use them, then don't use them. Then you don't have to use them to fight this system. And comparing that to it's just staggering to me to make that equivalency, which is such a false equivalency, that it's just mind-blowing to me. And then to double down on it when the story comes out and say, no, that was exactly the comparison that I was trying to make. And if you look at the Twitter replies on this, it's just, they're all over the place with, what on earth are you talking about, man? This is not even remotely close to a comparison. You entered into a contract with Google willingly and then violated that contract, spurring a lawsuit. That's a little different than the civil rights movement here in the U.S., where huge swaths of people were often violently oppressed and laws were on the books, making it so that they were treated as less than equal citizens, not by any willingness or contract that they had entered into, where if you treat us this way, we're going to get millions of dollars, like your Epic and Apple contract. You agreed to those. It's just a mind-bogglingly stupid comparison to make. So yeah, the Twitter and internet replies have not been kind to Mr. Sweeney, who just continues to go down this rabbit hole, even as I am recording this. Somebody by the name of Rene Togo tweeted, Sweeney, Apple's monopoly and insidious business practices on the App Store are akin to Jim Crow laws. And just a few minutes ago, as I am recording this, Tim Sweeney digs in again. There's no comparison between the struggle for fundamental human rights and this argument with monopolies, but there is much we can learn from the movement. The tendency for companies is to negotiate privately for profit advantage, shying away from standing for real principles. Again, no acknowledgement that this was a horribly misplaced analogy, the wrong comparison to make. You can make this point without likening Apple v. Epic in court over money to the civil rights movement in the United States. Not to mention that in the current climate, this is an incredibly tone-deaf statement to make anyway. But then to just be so far off base when making it, you can make this argument without having to draw a comparison to anything. You can just say, hey, when laws or rules are unfair or unequitable, you challenge them. You don't play with them. That's it. Now, you might look a little hypocritical that you did play with them for the tune of $1.2 billion annually before you decided to make this fight, but that'll be litigated in the court of public opinion and in court in general. But unreal. What do you guys and gals think of this? Let me know in the comments below. On my book, or in my book, I mean, this might have just made it really easy to just tell the Epic Games Store to screw off at this point, which is a shame because of how much I'm enjoying Rocket League now. So this is another thing I kind of have to reflect personally on and decide, if I'm going to engage in products, whether it comes to Epic. And that's a thought maybe you'll have to have as well. I've boycotted for other reasons. Is this one man's off-the-cuff statement that is, he's just now digging in? Is this, does this lead to maybe me having thoughts about the company as a whole? I don't know. I'm gut reacting to this right now, so I have to think of this through a little bit more for my own personal moral compulsions. But yeah, incredibly tone deaf. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And until next time, gang, stay safe, and we'll see you out on the servers.